Through this painting, Edward expresses a true glimpse of his feelings, being inner troubles and anxiety. This painting is based off of Edward's experience of him being left behind on a walk by his two buddies, seen in the background of the painting. Techniques. In order to dissect and see part of the structure of this painting, I had to use 5 techniques, each being in one of the following categories: line, space, and value. I chose to use basic thrust maps to see where the painter wanted my eye to lead, arabesque to see how the painter wanted my eye to flow, silhouettes to see the pattern of how the painter layered black and white, contrast to see where the darkest point was next to the lightest point, and lastly, rebated squares to see the stability and placement of the overall big shapes. Basic thrust map. By using the basic thrust map, I found that the main horizontal line goes to the man on the right near the end of the bridge. The vertical line travels up into the large blue stroke in the orange sky and travels down a bit past the man's feet. The horizontal line, I found, runs from the top of the two men's heads and runs a bit past the peninsula that is blue. And lastly, the main diagonal line is aligned with the fence running behind the screaming man. The point where the diagonal line starts is where the man in the background is placed. Due to the story, I believe that the point the painter wants your eye to lead to, other than the man screaming, is the two men in the back. The diagonal line from the fence runs through the screaming man's mouth and travels to their heads, showing he is screaming to them or for them to hear. The other line shows the energy should flow and lead to them as well. When drawing the arabesque, I found that the beginning of the curvy line starts from the left hand of the man screaming, makes a kind of S shape on the man's body, and follows the right outline of the peninsula, leading up to the first curve of the mountain and ending on the top of the two men's heads. The arabesque starts at the man screaming but ends at the heads of the two men in the back. Due to the story, it is trying to show us that the man is screaming out to his friends or buddies, but because of the scenery or what's going on in the background, it's getting distracted, so the scream does not reach them and kind of throws them off. For the silhouette, I changed the filter to black and white. Whatever was gray or white, I blocked out as white, and whatever was black or a darker gray, I blacked out as black. By doing this, I saw the pattern the painter used to layer black and white. He chose to use white to black rather than black to white, black to white. The sky for the most part is white, aside from the blue strokes, and the water, floor, and the bridge of the man's face is as well white, leaving black on the mountains, peninsula, fence, the two men, and the screaming man's clothes. The reason why Edvard could have used about equal amounts of dark and light was to show his mixed emotions, light being his brighter emotions and feelings, while dark colors and even black being anxiety and his sadder feelings and emotions. For this art piece, I found that the point of contrast was a bit hard to find. The painting had about 3 points of what I believed could have been the point of contrast. 1 being the star in the sky, 2 being the 2 boats in the water, and 3 being the peninsula that touches the water. I decided that the peninsula being the darkest point, meaning the water, which is the lightest point, was the best option for the point of contrast. I don't really know why the painter decided to put this as the main point of contrast, but I noticed that the dark peninsula meets the water, and then everything else was light, until our eyes meet the 2 men who are dark, like the peninsula. Rebated squares. As you can see, the line of the squares and the X fit well within the painting and support it. The 2 parallel diagonals going from the right go along the dark piece of land, and if you flip it, then you can see how it works and goes along the 2 heads of the men, the fence, and through the peninsula. Edvard uses this to help stabilize his painting and part of the placement. Like I mentioned in the beginning, if you were to look at this painting and figure out what it feels like to scream but nobody hears you, then this painting would be great to contemplate, because the painting shows us emotion and feeling of what it feels like to be alone. After going through and using the 5 techniques, I discovered a bit more of what the story is behind the painting. As I mentioned in the beginning, it is essentially about anxiety, but the design and structure I was able to find after using the strategies revealed a bit more. I was able to find that his scream travels through the painting, but the 2 men don't hear it. Also, their backs are turned towards the man. The background is very busy and noisy and sort of distracts you, which is what seems like what happened to the men. They weren't paying attention to Edvard and went ahead while being distracted, leaving Edvard alone and anxious, similar to the background.